nothing can stop me. No. 'Cause I'm addicted to what you and I realize. Lead the way, I follow. No need to say where we are heading now, babe. I follow to the edge of it all. So tell you good night, 'cause I'll find no matter what. Yeah, susceptible now before the moment flies, before it flies. So tell you good night, 'cause I'll find no matter what. Susceptible now before the moment.
What's up, guys? This is Rob, and I'm the vet.
Hey, I'm Murph, and I really like ice cream.
What's up, guys? It's Shay, and I vote that Murph just sings sexy time music moving forward in the future. Welcome to the Waiting Table Podcast. What is up?
I 100% agree. I don't know if people know, but as sexy time music is going, even if we're on mute, they can hear us, Murph. So yeah, we heard all of that amazing singing.
Honestly,
I
the
hope you
music was
enjoyed it.
the music was kind of distracting. I kind of just wanted it to be Murph, to be
Right?
honest.
I don't know the words, so I can't really say I was singing. I was
No,
just
you
like,
got it.
I
Exactly
got that
it.
one line. I got that one line, but that was it. The rest of it's just
It's the only one we know.
Yeah.
That's about it.
good time. Yeah, that's all I know.
What's up, guys? Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Waiting Table Podcast, where we have roundtable discussions about the hottest topics in weight loss with, of course, the coolest people from the bariatric community. I'm Rob, this is Murph, we got Shay, and we've got you guys. So grab a chair, wind down from your busy day, and take a seat at the table. Murph, what's up, buddy? How are you today?
Oh, you're throwing it to me. We
Yeah.
get to talk about the order here. Hey, doing good. Been out sick all day today, so I just woke up a little bit ago, and I am here for this episode, man. I'm really excited to, see where I'm supposed to be, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right and wrong, and just pick Kim's brain. I'm really excited about this episode. So how you doing, Shay?
I'm doing good. It's been a busy week. I can't believe it's only Wednesday. It feels like it's Friday, but man, things are good. It kind of started off, I was feeling a bit sad this week, and then now I feel like hopeful and happy. So all emotions are welcome all the time. So I've been running the full gamut, which feels good. Feels good to feel feelings. Not all the time, but
I feel feelings and it feels good. That's
I
great.
feel
I'm glad that
feelings.
you enjoyed feeling feelings. That's good.
I love
yeah. What feelings have you been feeling, Rob?
Excitement, because this episode is going to be amazing. So for anyone who does not know, tonight's guest is Kim, or on Instagram, Active Bariatrics. And so I know when I first met Kim, I was super excited. Murph and I always talk about how when we joined Instagram, we were sort of on a search for knowledge and try to find certain things that pertain to us specifically and what our bariatric journey would look like. And I don't know if Kim was around at that time, but I wish I had found her earlier, because one of my biggest fears of having bariatric surgery is, how do I live this active lifestyle that I had learned to love, and it was a part of me, while following my bariatric diet of, I can eat this tablespoon of this and a tablespoon of that. And it freaked me out because I didn't want to give that up. And today, Kim is going to shine a light on some of the truths out there in regards to not only being a bariatric patient, or a patient who might live an obese lifestyle or have an obese lifestyle, or is left that lifestyle and is now getting healthy again, but being active, but how to do that while following the guidelines that we've been given as well. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Kim.
What's up?
Hey.
Hey.
you?
We're good. How are you, Kim?
Hey, I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
We
Yeah.
can. We can.
Awesome. Hi, you guys. Good to see you all.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm honored to be here.
I just have to say your microphone is a good one. Like your voice sounds so buttery smooth. I just have to say that.
Well, you know what, you guys, I have to give props. So my husband is like the tech guy, and when I had Rob on my podcast a while back, I have to give him props because I am not a tech person. And so my husband was like, you should do a podcast. And I'm like, that's awesome, but I don't know how to do any of those things. So can you help me? And so he got this all set up and, took it from there. So thank you.
That's awesome. Well, give him props. Let him
I
know
will.
that I could tell I could tell it sounded really nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Buttery smooth.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, I'm so curious, like, can you just tell us like a little bit about you? Like, how did you kind of get in this line of work? What do you do? Just kind of some of the basics?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick snapshot. So I actually initially, when I became a dietitian 16 years ago, it's been a long time, my very first job, I worked in a hospital where I covered the floor that had bariatric surgery patients. And so my first experience was with patients who had just had surgery. And so my position there was to educate them on the post-op diet. And then I had always been an athlete myself growing up and was always interested in sports nutrition. So I was in the clinical position for some time and then also decided to volunteer at a local Division I university here where I live in California and help with the athletes. So that kind of got me going. And then I was the dietitian there, the team dietitian there for 7 years, and really just gained more experience in the sports nutrition field. And at about, 10 years ago, I took a full-time position in a outpatient bariatric surgical center. So I was the only dietitian for the bariatric department, and I educated patients pre and post-op. And what I found is that people would have surgery and then they would want to start exercising or, hey, I want to start running, I want to start lifting weights. And it was just, there was no information. And it was just that typical, like, oh, well, it's 8 to 1,200 calories a day for life, good luck. And there just seemed to be such a void. And so what I found was utilizing a lot of the information from the sports nutrition field, we could apply that to bariatric, athletes, but there has to be some modifications because of sports nutrition guidelines are almost like opposite of bariatric guidelines, right? Because they recommend, sports nutrition is more carbs, more calories, lots of fluids, all the things. And then a bariatric diet is, protein, low carb, lower volume. So it was just like this area that I was like, these two things have to work together. So about a year ago, I opened up my own private practice, Active Bariatric Nutrition, and I work now one-on-one with clients to help them optimize their nutrition to meet their fitness goals. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's impressive. I love it.
It's been fun. It's been a good learning curve, that's
So-
for sure.
So what got you, have you always had a healthy relationship with food? And you've always, you said you were an athlete, but what led you into that field? But before that field, were you gonna, a lot of people, wanted to be a vet or an astronaut and, but is that something you've always been interested in?
Well, I had my undergrad degree in kinesiology, and I became a teacher. But I'll tell you the honest truth. The first time that I was exposed to nutrition was I played soccer at the University of Illinois. And my junior year, I was just tired all the time and just felt, like garbage and, college lifestyle. I was probably, skipping meals, going out, having fun, and then expecting to go and be able to train hard at soccer. And it's, it's a grueling sport. So my coach was like, hey, there's this sports dietitian. She's based out of a grocery store over in Urbana. You should go meet with her. And I'm like, okay. So I go in and meet with her and she just was like, look, you can't train like this eating, like one meal a day. Like, what are you doing? And I just really didn't understand how nutrition impacted performance. And it really piqued my interest. And that's what got me, even though I finished my degree and became a teacher for a year, I went back and became a dietitian, which took me another, 4 years to do that. So that's really what started it all. Was I was exposed to a sports dietitian and that kind of got me going in that direction.
That's cool.
Well, and I can relate to that, not so much from the athletic perspective, but it's only been in the last 4 years that I've just learned about like basic nutrition. And that's just not something I was taught, like from my parents, from school, really. learning about, macronutrients and how those apply and what it actually looks like to fuel your body base level without adding any activity in. And so I'm curious what I think maybe would be helpful, like for what's kind of the first thing or the most important thing that you tell people when they haven't ever been exposed to nutrition, kind of like where you were in the beginning of like, oh, I thought I could just eat one meal a day and like that would be fine. Like
Right.
for people that don't know anything about nutrition, can you give people just kind of like, and this might be kind of a tall ask, but just kind of like a basic overview on why proper nutrition is important and what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, just in a nutshell, I would say, we have to fuel our bodies to move. So, to contract your muscles, to run, to be able to repeat movements and exert force, you have to have nutrients in your muscles that allow them to produce force. And so, in general, in nutrition, I always just tell folks, look, it's important that we focus in on getting enough calories and the macronutrients. So, for someone that doesn't know much, we talk about how carbohydrates, which is basically sugar, a fancy word for sugar, it is the main energy source for muscles. And so we have to incorporate that into our diet. Protein is really important for muscle growth and recovery. And I'll usually, when someone doesn't understand those things, we'll go over what foods have carbohydrates, what foods have protein. Talk about fats. Fats for a long time kind of got a bad rap in terms of the diet world. Everything was low fat, and that was going to be solving all of our issues, and it really wasn't. But fat's an important macronutrient as well that helps us make us feel full and helps for vitamin absorption. And so all these matter, they're important. And what I try to get folks to really just look at it is more of looking at it from a fueling standpoint. Just like you put gas in a car, we have to have fuel to run our bodies. And so you can't just kind of haphazardly go at these things without good nutrition. Your just body can't run on it. So I try to start from a macro level, so to speak, and go over those things and get an understanding of where the person is with what they know or don't know and start from there.
So my question is, and so I ask this because I find that this is something that I've seen in my experience with other people, is something that they very often disregard, or they don't really put focus on that. As you had mentioned, fat is something that we put a lot of focus in because we know that it yields the most calories per gram. Carbs are something that we always look at because in diet culture, carbs are the bad guy. And for most of us who have gone through this program, it's always like protein, water, protein, water. For me, the biggest thing that people do not, and we talk about this a lot on this show, we talk about poop, but fiber is the thing that I find that people totally disregard. Yeah. And it's super, super important. It's super important for everyone, regardless of whether you're a bariatric patient in general. But I find for us, because we have such limitations in terms of overall volume that we eat, right, fiber is super important with making sure that we maintain all the things that need to be maintained. Totally. Is there something that you see that is often sort of either a misconception or something that is often forgotten that's important?
Honestly, I mean, I would say the number one thing that I run into is just the fear of carbohydrate and implementing that in the diet. And when should I start increasing that? Or when should I really move away from that protein water, like the basic post-op bariatric diet, to when should I start incorporating more carbohydrate-rich foods? Should I even be doing that? Should I be eating more because I'm exercising for an hour? I'm only exercising 30 minutes. Should I eat carbs then? So I think the biggest thing that I see with confusion around is when should I start kind of making my diet incorporate more variety of foods, but mostly the carbohydrate-rich foods? Because again, there's that fear that I start introducing them, it's going to be, maybe I'm doing too much and it might derail my success. And I can honestly tell you that you certainly can incorporate carbohydrates. And I know, Rob, you and I have talked about this. It's so helpful if you are trying to exercise and can really round out the diet. But fiber is very important, certainly.
And I'm curious what your answer is to that with carbs, because that's something I struggled with. I'm just about a little over a year post-op, and with how my program was structured, they recommended for the first 6 months post-op to just have protein, and any carbs that they recommended was just like vegetable carbs. So, zucchini, green beans, things like that. And what I found is after having surgery, and I've spoken about this openly, sorry guys, I'm going to be talking about periods again. They hate when I bring this topic up.
Gosh.
But I noticed, or it was about the first 3 months or so, I just experienced a lot of excess bleeding. I think just as my fat cells were shrinking, it was just estrogen, coming out. That's what I think for my body, what was going on. But I was so lethargic and tired, and I was working with a great physical therapist and a primary care provider. And they were the ones that were like, well, why don't you try to incorporate in some carbs that, will be okay on your stomach? You can try it. It doesn't have to be a big amount to start with. So I think about month 2 or 3, I started incorporating like sweet potatoes, oatmeal, bananas, things like that. And it did really well with me. And I'm so glad I did, because it made me feel so much better. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that. If you see that with other people, and kind of just any, I guess, thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, every surgical center is different. And every surgeon has their training and where they are with their post-op guidelines, that they implement in their surgical center. And so I have seen carbs be recommended, right out of the gate versus, up to 6 months, no carbs outside of like vegetables or fruit. So like no whole grains and things like that. But to answer your question, I do see when folks start kind of liberalizing the diet a little bit more and rounding out their plate, small portions. I'm not saying that, the carbohydrate replaces the protein. We still focus on that. I still teach my clients that too. We eat our protein food first. But when we increase that variety of vitamins and minerals and fiber, and the grains are going to give us a feeling more of fullness that rounds out our meal. It just overall, not only I think it just kind of gives us mentally, like, I feel like I'm getting back to my, back to normal, so to speak. Like I'm not just having to eat protein all the time. And I know you guys could tell me that, but I feel like when I am like, yeah, you can go ahead and try some of that, it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh my gosh, like permission to try something. And it just kind of makes us feel a little bit better. I don't know if it's a mental mindset shift or what, but I'm sure you guys could speak on that too.
Well, I think you're right. It is very much a mental mindset shift. And I think, one of the big fears of people going through this change with the surgery is the fear of, I'm never going to be able to eat like I have, or I do right now. And so I think it's very important for people to normalize some of the things that we do eat, like carbs. Obviously there's a reason why we got to the point where we did. We can't go back to eating that. Right. But I think it's important for people to realize that at some point, I would say, like, I know for me, and maybe I'm lucky, 95% of the types of foods that I was able to eat back then, I could eat now in moderation, smaller meals, in smaller portions, right? But I think it's important to do that because, as we know, and we talk about this on the show, a big part of this journey is the mental and emotional part, right? If you don't have that down, it's going to be very difficult to be consistent and to stay on anything, right? So I think it's important. So yeah, like, free the carb, guys, free the carb.
Yes. Free.
I think that was one of the biggest takeaways I got from that. It wasn't so much like a nutritional, I mean, I learned about that too, but it was more going, oh, wait a second, I can decide what's best for my body. And that might look different than what my program's recommending to me. And so that's what a lot of this year's been for me, of going, oh, like, I can make choices for myself, even if that's different than what other people are recommending or doing. That was a big takeaway.
Yeah. I always tell people you're a study of one, right? Every person is different. Everyone's journey is different. You can't compare yourself to your, husband, wife, sister, brother, whoever's had the surgery, because you're different. You're individual. You're unique, and your goals are different. Your journey up into the surgery and as well as after is going to be different. So I love that you said that, because it's everybody's diet, especially when people talk to me about like sports nutrition guidelines. They're like, oh, are you telling them to eat a ton of carbs? I'm like, no, but guess what? Some people can eat more carbs than other. And there's some people that can tolerate a lot more after bariatric surgery versus some that can't. And so we have to find what works best for you, so it's a lot of individualization for sure.
It's something we say in our house, and that we tell our kids a lot, is just listen to your body. What do you think you need to get to that next meal? You just got to get that fuel, like you were talking about, just enough to get you to that next meal, and listening to your body. So I'm learning how to listen to my body still. And, and I don't know if this is a myth. I haven't seen like real research on this, but when I had part of my stomach removed, so I had the sleeve surgery, and I was told, I think by my doctor or someone in my doctor's office, that the part of my stomach that senses or sends like cravings to my brain, that portion of my stomach was removed. But now I'm almost 2 years post-op. I'm starting to crave things again. So I'm wondering, am I craving these things because that part of the stomach doesn't work anymore, or because I'm listening to my body and my body is saying that I need that certain thing, you know what I mean? And or don't need that. So like carbs, for instance, like I tend to stay away from carbs because I know they don't do it for me. And so I would, make another choice. But I'm starting to have cravings again. Is that something that is normal? Is there any truth behind that? Is that a lifestyle or?
Well, for sure with the sleeve, because we're removing 80% of the stomach where ghrelin, which is the hormone that tells us that to eat, right, is removed. But unfortunately, our body is very efficient at basically increasing over time the secretion of ghrelin again. And so even though you have a smaller stomach, the secretion of ghrelin does increase over time. And so I remember in our surgical center, our surgeons would tell our patients that, typically after a year or two, you might start feeling a little bit more hungry because that hormone does rise over time. So what I would say to that is certainly listen to your body like you're doing. I think that's really smart because, again, everyone's different. But, I would look at too, I always just, when someone says, hey, I'm craving more, I'll take a look at, what are you eating at each meal, your timing, what does your plate look like? Are you getting protein and fiber? Are you being consistent with that? What are you doing for exercise? As well as, are you drinking enough fluids? Have you been getting good sleep? Are you stressed? Because those things also impact how we, look at, wanting maybe to have something to eat. Those are all going to be impacted as well. So those are other factors that I would say can play a role in it. But I do hear that after a year to 2 years usually is where we start to see some of that that ghrelin is incring over time.
Okay. Yeah, and it's usually when I'm on my period too. So
No, listen.
Try to
Shay
fit
and
in. It's cool.
I
I
know.
We know.
want to be a part of that conversation.
High
too.
five. High five, Murph. Good.
Listen,
Hey,
it's okay.
Well, and see, for me though, like in the beginning, like because I was expecting to not feel hungry at all after surgery, because that's what a lot of people say. And I'm telling you what, I was hungry after surgery, and it was not head hunger. Like that's what I feel like a lot of people have said. It's like, oh, you have head hunger after. No, like
Right.
metabolically, physically, I was hungry, and so it's different for everybody.
Oh, for sure.
Yep, 100%. I agree.
We have an awesome question from Justin. Now, just for context, Justin is a tank. He had bariatric surgery, lost a lot of weight. He got into you're the perfect guest for Justin.
Oh, good.
Right?
Okay.
Justin, and he also said a couple of things. One, he's hungry all the time. He also trains quite a bit. He does heavy lifting. He's put on quite a lot of muscle. He knows a lot about his nutrition. But this was a question, and I love seeing this question because, again, this is something I think, sometimes those buzzwords that we understand, or how we sort of understand the different breakdowns of different things like carbs and sugars, or whatever the case might be in terms of the source and the form of carbs. So the question was, should I count net carbs or total carbs?
Oh, hey, Justin. So I recommend counting total carbs. And the reason being is net carbs, factor in, fiber. And just when we look at the research out there, everybody responds and metabolizes carbohydrate differently. And for me, when I'm educating someone on, carbohydrates, looking at a label, how to read a food label, I just say, look at total carbs, because we know that that's what's in the food item that's measured in that particular serving size. And we just account for that. I always just think of fiber as just a bonus. Fiber is a bonus. It's certainly going to help you with better blood sugar control, make us feel more full. It's going to help us poop, good things. So I typically recommend just counting total carbs. That way, what's coming in from all your sources. And then again, more fiber, the better.
Yeah.
And for those that might not know what that means, net carbs, how I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's when you take the total carbs and you minus out fiber, right?
Yes,
so if it's
correct.
something like 20 grams of carbs total, but then there's, 5 grams of fiber, then the
Sugar,
net
alcohols.
carbs
Yes,
would
sugar, alcohols
be
as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
So it like
And then
subtracts
Mhm.
it from the
Yeah.
total. And then that's the net carbs that are impacting, your blood sugar that you're,
Yeah.
digesting. And I just, personally, I'm just of the mind of just let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Total carbohydrate. That's just kind of, I've always done that since I was, became a dietitian. And I know net carbs kind of came into play more. And,
Because
some of these
Atkins.
things are marketing stuff
Yes.
too. And I'm not saying that, that's not, that fiber doesn't impact your absorption. Absolutely. But some of it's marketing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I think I know it was huge with Atkins when Atkins
Yep.
was pretty big, and I think it was their way of sort of simplifying. Eat this. You have X amount of net
Yes.
carbs, which is X amount of sugar that will impact your blood sugar levels, and I think that was sort of their way to sort of control that. But you had mentioned, I too like looking at total carbs because at the end of the day, every gram of carb still affects your overall caloric intake. They have a caloric
Yes.
value, right? So if you're depending on how you're tracking your diet and your intake, if you are looking at calories, and even if it is a net carb or not a net carb, it still has a caloric value,
Still
right?
counts.
So it's still something to
Absolutely.
understand. Yeah, Justin said he agrees. He used to he counts total carbs now, but used to go by net carbs after surgery. And that's a really good point, Justin, because I find that a lot of people, I know I was the same, and it took a lot of focus for me to try to break out of my understanding of nutrition. Like I knew a lot of the basics. Like I had a very big, I used to study sports nutrition like crazy. Like that was a big part of what I like to do. But we talk about like diet culture all the time, and understanding what to do, what not to do, and to follow specific diets, especially fad diets. And I found that a lot of people still have that mentality of, we are eliminating this, eliminating that. And I know that when I started post-op, it was based on volume, right? And in my head, I'm just like, I've never done just this volume thing, right?
Right.
It was always like, okay, I can't have this amount of carbs, I can't have this. And so, for me to wrap my head around, I can eat this, I just can only eat smaller amounts. And I think it catches people off guard a lot still.
Yeah.
And so I find that a big challenge for a lot of people to sort of break out of their knowledge of what you should do to lose weight, and understand that what we've done, obviously there's a diet component or dietary component, but it's not following anything specifically out there in regards to a diet or a fad diet or something like that it's very much a lifestyle change, and it's constantly changing. Shay, you had mentioned like early on you were hungry, you're eating smaller amounts, but as Murph had said, it grows, it changes, hormonal changes, right, will alter that. And so all of a sudden we're hungrier more, we can eat more, we can expose ourselves to more different types of foods and be able to absorb it and process it properly. So yeah, lots of changes that we go through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We got another question that I think is a good one, and I think will be helpful for other people too. Savannah had said, I think she meant to say nights, but she said midnights, but I think she said nights. And I struggle.
Midnights.
I know she's probably tired from working all the nights.
We say midnights out here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, third shift is
Oh.
midnights. Yeah, when you're
When
you're in this
part
area
of Michigan, right?
say
I've
midnight.
never heard that term
midnight.
before. Like,
Yeah, we work midnights.
what is that time range then?
Like third shift, like like
Oh.
7 p to 7 a ish.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
12 p.m. to 12:05.
Yeah,
Nice.
perfect. Okay, well, perfect. Well, I work midnights, and I think she meant to say that then. And I struggle with staying awake and snacking through the night. Any recommendations?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And Savannah, I know that's a tough shift. It really is. And obviously our body, our circadian rhythms are set for, we should be sleeping at night. And I know that can be hard to, just function, stay awake. And so what I typically will say to folks is when I have a client that works nights is we figure out what their waking hours, and we treat it just like we would do if you were awake during the day, right? So if your waking hour, you work until, let's just say you work till 7 a.m., you go home. A lot of people will, if they want to just go right to bed, okay, fine. Then go to sleep, wake up at whatever, 1, 2 p.m., whatever, and we start the day from there. And so what I usually do is we focus on a consistent eating pattern, just like you would do if you were getting up at 7 a.m. versus getting up at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever it might be. And we still try to distribute the same nutrition over your waking hours, even though it's shifted later. And so I try to, again, recommend, balancing out our meals. Avoid getting into that snacking pattern where you don't actually eat a meal, right? Because if we're just snacking little bits, we're not really using our tool of the bariatric surgery, which is we put food in there, protein, fiber, which makes us feel full, makes us feel satiated for 3 to 4 hours till our next meal, and then we, eat again. But if we're just little bits nibbling kind of throughout the day, you're going to chronically be hungry. So your best strategy really is to shift it to just like you would do day. Focus in on your 3 meals that you might have. If you need to have a snack at work, just like you would do if it was daytime, you have a mid-afternoon snack, you have a middle of the night snack, fine. But incorporate protein at the snack, fiber, so again, that you are feeling full, and make sure you're sipping your fluids in between. Sipping, because that too helps us feel more full as well.
Yeah. That's great, Kim. And I think too, that would apply for people even if they haven't had bariatric surgery, right?
100%.
Because that's something I know sometimes I'm guilty of making a distinction between like bariatric surgery or that, like saying it as if it only applies. But right. I know in my journey, I was eating almost like exactly how I'm eating now, prior to surgery, when I learned more about nutrition, where I was eating every 2 to 3 hours. I usually would have breakfast, a morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, dinner, and then sometimes, depending on how I was feeling, a nighttime snack or a bedtime snack. And so it's interesting that I think that's a good distinction to call out, that, and again, from a dietitian's perspective, is that accurate? Yes. That's something you can do without bariatric surgery as well.
100%. Yeah. Same exact recommendation I would tell someone that had not had bariatric surgery. Same thing. Because that consistency of eating, it's giving your body fuel on a consistent schedule. It's helping maintain your blood sugar levels. It's making you feel more full if you're sipping in between. I mean, these are strategies that anybody could use. It's not just for a bariatric patient.
And meal prepping, or thinking ahead of it.
Exactly.
You want to set yourself up for success. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're going into that shift. Savannah's my sister, and she works from home.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So she's down in her office.
Yeah.
And it's hard to trick I don't know if you're trying to trick your mind or trick your body, but you
yes.
think after midnight, that's when you pull out the popcorn and the ice cream, and those are the party hours. You know what I mean? So you're trying to trick that process. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's some more
hours, man.
Hey, no, but you know what I mean? It's like nothing good happens after midnight. Might as well, throw the diet away and bring out the ice cream, But if you meal prep, I don't meal prep. I'll be honest, but I do wake up and decide, I'm going to front load my protein in the morning. I know my work schedule is going to be busy once I hit the floor, and so I'll have my Built Bars or my yogurt. I just had a protein yogurt towards the end of the night.
Murph 10 for Built Bars.
Murph 10. Murph 10. Get your Built Bars 10% off.
But I want to just say something really quick. Meal planning is so crucial for success.
Yeah.
I can't even. Yeah. I mean, the folks that come back and they've really just been successful. And I mean, this isn't the only strategy, but it is such a helpful strategy, because if you have the food that you need when you need it, it's a lot easier than going, oh, you know what, I'm starving and I don't have anything. Now I've got to rely on what's around. And then you're kind of out of luck. It's usually not the best thing. So I totally agree with you. Meal prepping is so important.
Yeah.
And sometimes I over meal prep. Sorry. I don't know where I'm going to be in the hospital or how much time I'll have. So I'll take 2 different sources of protein, one being a yogurt and then another one like egg salad last night, wasn't feeling the egg salad, didn't have time for, you know what I mean? But it's like, I've got 2 different options. I give myself some choices, and then I, wound up not eating the egg salad, went with the yogurt, and I still got my protein in. It felt good, just plan it out. Think ahead of time.
You just got to be intentional. Exactly. Right. Like even if you don't have, individual portion size set out, know that you have a resource available wherever you are, whenever you are. Like I always, same type of thing, right? Yeah. Have your bars, whether it's that, have some food prepared that you can always reach for. And if you know yourself more than anyone else, if you know that you are not hey, I'm a chicken breast, brown rice, and broccoli type of person, then I have a bit of everything that I can sort of pick and choose from based on how I'm feeling, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna say is like I think it's the rebel in me. The guys know I'm a little bit
Holy.
rebellious, but
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
like it like
So
meal
rebellious.
prepping. Yeah, so rebellious. But like meal prepping, I don't know. Like I'm just like I don't want to eat that. Like I just have this like rebel attitude.
So
But I
edgy.
do. I know. So I'm so unhinged,
Whoa.
these days. But
Whoa.
I do a lot of food prepping. And so what I mean by that, instead of doing like individual portions, I'll just have different foods similar to what like Murph was saying too. But it's like, I'll have a bunch of sweet potatoes roasted, set aside. Or like what we did today was we had our groceries delivered and I had hamburger, ground chicken, and chicken thighs. And so we prepped all of it where we had barbecued chicken thighs. I did teriyaki chicken meatballs and then like hamburgers. And so Dylan just grilled all of those over his lunch. And like my mouth is watering because like
I
it
know.
smelled so good. But it's like, so we just had basically like this meat platter of chicken thighs, chicken meatballs, and hamburgers. And so it's like I could then mix and match if I want to do like a hamburger with a bun, or I could do a hamburger with sweet potato fries or whatever. It's like then there's options to kind of pick and choose, so it's not so like regimented.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but after Easter, I had like 3 18 packs of hard-boiled eggs. And I love hard-boiled eggs, come to
Me
find out.
too.
And I hadn't had them in a while. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I'm not going to lie. I think I've eaten the majority of the 3 18 packs of hard-boiled eggs because they're such a great snack, great in protein. I grab that. I'll grab string cheese. We have almonds and just like fast, easy grab and go things.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be sophisticated to work. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Having
Exactly.
salad, chicken, all these things are so fast and easy. I love all those things that you guys do because they work and they're easy.
Well, and I think the rule with the hard-boiled eggs is they have to be dyed in order to like taste good, right?
Yes.
From Easter eggs. That's I think the
Right.
rule.
Yes.
Shay likes some
absolutely.
devil because she's a rebel.
Yeah, because
Because
she's
I'm
a
a
rebel.
rebel.
What a devil.
Gotta have the
Question. This is
devil
actually a
going.
question my wife asked earlier today about hard-boiled eggs. So, how many eggs? And I will ask this question so everyone else can, because I
Sounds
think
like
a
a
lot
joke.
of us.
Are you-
How many
many
eggs
eggs?
can you have a day?
Yeah. So, there used to be the dietary guidelines for Americans used to recommend no more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol per day from dietary sources. And, eggs have source of cholesterol. So they would say, no more than 1 or 2 eggs, in a day, and make sure overall you're not having other high sources of cholesterol. And then I want to say it was maybe 2015 or 2016 that they created the new guidelines, and they tossed that idea because what they said was that it was more, your cholesterol level was more determined by genetic factors than it was from dietary intake. So what I tell folks is look, I mean, if are we eating 10 eggs a day, or we're eating 6 eggs a day, maybe we should look at other sources of protein. But I personally, every single morning, when I come home from the gym, I have 3 eggs. I scramble 3 eggs and put cheese in there. And, again, but that's me. I like eggs, and everyone has to figure out how much they can tolerate. But is there like a set amount? No, I don't know that there's a set recommendation, like you can only have 3 eggs a day or whatever. It's just mostly about your overall pattern. And that's another message I try to, when I look at people is I'll say, hey, it's your overall intake. There's not one food in your day that's going to derail this journey. It's your patterns over time that we have to look at. So to answer your question, I don't know that there's some limit. I wish I could tell you, but so tell her, go ahead and eat the eggs. Go for it.
We were going to
We were
anyways.
going to do it anyways. Yeah.
Because we're rebels too.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Egg rebels, the best
right?
kind.
That's it. I am going to ask a question.
Okay.
So let's just say you had a specific client who was all about the details and the nitty gritty of the programs and of nutrition and all that, and they didn't want to just go top level in regards to macros, overall caloric intake, things of that nature, and they want to look at sort of nutrient timing. When's the best time to have certain nutrients, a certain amount of nutrients? Do you Murph mentioned front loading protein at certain times, sugars at a specific time. What would you suggest as basic guidelines?
Well, I mean, first of all, I always cite, research. I mean, is there research out there that supports that there's specific times a day that you should eat carbohydrates? No. Mostly it's about day to day. So when we look at like muscle gaining, the number one factor is overall protein intake and calorie intake. Okay. How you distribute that. Yes, there's other strategies. So like if you're looking at a hierarchy of, let's just use muscle gaining as an example. The number one thing is overall your calories and your total protein in a day. Okay. The next strategy above that would be, then we look at timing. That's the next most important. But the number one important is just getting it in.
Right.
So the next strategy would be looking at timing, and then we look at distribution per meal, how many grams of protein you're getting, for example. And so the importance of those things, become less as we move up. But what I would say to that is again, individualized. Some people will eat more carbohydrates in the first part of their day because that's when they're going to work out. And then later in the day, they don't feel like they need as much. They are going to primarily focus more on protein and maybe a smaller serving. So I would say it's going to be best if we look at what your day looks like. When are you going to exercise if that's part of your routine? We can certainly strategize with nutrients around those workouts. But if you are saying like, what's the best, do we have to stop eating carbs after 6 p.m.? No, there's no research out there that suggests these like arbitrary time rules. You know what I always say to people? Let's say you and I got on an airplane right now and flew to Australia, and we get off and it's 15 hours ahead there or whatever, right? But your body doesn't know that. It just knows, when did I eat last, right? I don't know that I all of a sudden got off an airplane, I'm in Australia, and my body's like, oh, it's 15 hours ahead. No, when did we eat last? It's 24-hour cycles. And so I try to just find what patterns work best for you to have you feel good, fuel your workouts. But strategizing around workouts definitely are important. That I would say yes.
Yep. I'll make sure to let them know.
Let that rebel know.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
I've had people that are like, oh, I heard I can't eat fruit after 12 p.m. And I'm like, noon. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Or, these other just arbitrary rules that get kind of, promoted on the internet. And you're just like, where did you hear this from? Oh, some person, you're just like, what, is there any research behind
There's
that?
a meme about it.
I know. You're just like, no. I don't.
And that's why I always like, a red flag always goes up when people speak in like absolute terms like that of like, you should always do that, or you should do this, that, or the other. Cause I feel like,
Never.
yes, I feel like I've
Never do
been
this.
preyed on, in that way. And I think a lot of us have been. So again, I'm learning how to critically think for myself of like, okay, that might work for them, but like, does that make sense for me? Maybe, maybe not. But there's a really good question that came in that I was going to share here. This person said, I'm just under 4 months post-op and wanting to start working out. I'm coming from a limited knowledge of working out. Where would you recommend I start?
Oh, that's such a great question. So just talking about working out, I would, walking is a good, starting movement. I had a physical therapist on my podcast in the very beginning when I started. And her recommendations were, we start with walking. And then if you want to start adding in weights, because remember, exercise takes energy, right? It requires energy intake. And when you're early post-op, you're not eating very many calories. And so if you wanted to go and have this hard workout, you're not going to feel good. So I always just say, start with where you are. We start with walking or other like lower impact forms of cardio as you're losing weight, and you're able to start implementing a little bit more, rounding out your diet where we get more calories, more carbohydrate with your protein. Then we can start maybe increasing the intensity level of the workouts, adding in more weights, things like that, or sports. But I would just say start slowly. Don't, I had someone recently that, was, 4 months post-op and wanted to run a half marathon. And I was like, maybe we should start with like a 5K and, see how that goes. And honestly, I would tell someone that hasn't had bariatric surgery to start with a 5K, because you're increasing your risk of injury, illness, getting worn down, to jumping into something that might not be realistic. So I would say start low and build up. You always have time. You can always go more, right? But if you jump into something, it's hard to back off if, without having some issues arise.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good advice.
Another good question. Savannah, thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Yeah. I love that question. And the thing about intermittent fasting as a bariatric patient is we're already, my opinion is we're already restricted overall on intake, right? Our volume's restricted, what we're absorbing is changed and or reduced depending upon the surgery. And For me, I do not recommend intermittent fasting for a bariatric patient because we have a tool that we're using, and that should be more around eating on a more consistent schedule. Because again, when it is time to eat, we can't eat that much, right? And also what I have found is that with intermittent fasting, especially with bariatric clients, it can lead to hypoglycemia. So low blood sugar, and then just feelings of fatigue. Again, your overall intake is already, limited. So for a bariatric client, I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not recommend it, to be quite, pointed. Now, for someone that hasn't had bariatric surgery and wants to try intermittent fasting, much like other eating patterns, what I have seen for someone that's working out, intermittent fasting can decrease muscle glycogen resynthesis, meaning restoring carbohydrates, being able to heal the muscle because you're going such a long period without eating. And so it can impact your body's ability to recover and or grow muscle tissue. So that's where I don't love intermittent fasting for my active clients that are non-bariatric, because it can impact your ability to, gain strength, muscle, etc. So again, I know that there's been some research looking at diabetics and intermittent fasting and things like that. And I would just say you'd have to see if it works for you. And then lastly, I would just say this, is it something that you can do forever? Right? Because ultimately, I think with eating and nutrition in general is we all have to, we can't just stop eating, right? It's not like alcohol or drugs that you can stop, but you can live. You have to eat. You have to have nutrition, right? And so if it's not an eating pattern that you can sustain, it's probably not a realistic pattern for you. So I would just always look at things when you see like, oh, this new diet recommended. Is it something that you think you can do for life? Because if it's not, it's probably not something to put your energy towards, and it probably won't be realistic.
And for somebody who isn't exercising and wanting to do the intermittent fasting, and hasn't had bariatric surgeries, that's where I was. I was at that place, and it's definitely not sustainable. It's you got to kind of do. I feel like you have to be very active when, and then even then, I feel like the time frame in which you are fasting shouldn't be, huge. I've heard of some people fasting, 21 hours and like crazy, ridiculous numbers. So again, everybody is different. And so, if you're going to do it, I like to fast while I'm sleeping. And that's about it.
Same. That's about it.
And as a bariatric patient, I don't know how I can go 2 or 3 hours without eating something. It's just definitely not for the bariatric patient, or at least for me. I know that.
Yeah. And I'll just throw out there too, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm the same with, people are going to be maybe sending messages, but I'm not a big fan of keto diet either with bariatric patients. And again, same reason, of course, I'm working with active bariatric clients. You're already reduced, your intake is already reduced, right? As a bariatric patient, and your absorption, et cetera. And going to a super high fat diet, 70% of your calories coming from fat for a keto diet, can a bariatric client even tolerate that? Probably not, because it's just too much fat and it sits too heavy for most folks. And again, your overall intake of carbs and everything have been reduced since you had the surgery anyways. And if you want to then go and exercise, they don't mix. And so I'm not a big fan of that either. I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm going to get some, angry comments, but
not for me, because I agree too. Like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
We're going to end the broadcast now, guys. Thank you very much. I'm just kidding.
And all of a sudden, my screen goes black.
Yeah.
Kim had to go.
Oh, she's gone.
Must be the internet in California. It's not really working. But
So Rob is an athlete. I feel like Rob could say he's an athlete. He works. But I mean, bro,
if you call pickleball an athletic sport, no, I'm just kidding. No, he is. It's
great for geriatric. What is an athlete that you would work with? I feel like I've taken on this attitude of like, I don't know if you've heard of like the NEAT movement, NEAT. It stands for something, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. But because I work in a hospital, long hours, I'm on my feet, 12,000 to 15,000 steps a day, moving, pulling, pushing people. Is that it? Am I an athlete? Or do I have to play pickleball?
No, my goodness. Yeah, I actually I talked to the person that helped me with my website because I was like, I need to change this because that is a misconception, which is I say bariatric athlete, but anyone that has movement goals or that is active throughout the day, or you are exercising for training for something, or you're doing pickleball, because I remember Rob telling me he went out and played pickleball for the first time with some older folks and they whooped him. That's what he told me. I don't know. But
It's true. It's true.
it
I
doesn't.
believe it.
It honestly, it doesn't matter. And so do I work. I work with folks, honestly. I'll have folks that'll come at, message me and say, hey, I'm just starting to walk, or, do more, and I'm feeling more tired, or I want to go back to the gym. Can you help me? Absolutely. Because ultimately my goal is to help folks understand how to use nutrition to help them, whatever, if they have certain goals, or just to feel better, because it's challenging after surgery with understanding, especially like after the first year, when a lot of surgical centers are like, see ya, good luck with your life. And, or you can't get back in to see your doctor in a timely fashion, or the dietitian for that matter. And so there's a lot of, what do I do now? And so I work with folks all over the spectrum. And so my term as an athlete is anyone that's just moving their body purposely. They're trying to maintain activity levels or do additional things. Those all are folks I'd love to work with.
So I think that means me and Murph we're athletes.
That's right.
I think we're athletes. Yeah, I think we're athletes. All right.
That's right.
There you go.
You don't have to be on a sports team, or like
Murph
competing
10.
on some team. No, absolutely. It's your personal.
Murph 10.
Murph 10. I'm an athlete.
I'm an athlete.
Sponsored athlete, Murph 10.
By my bars, yeah.
I was just going to say Built Bar 10, or what was it?
Yeah,
Murph 10, yeah.
Murph 10.
10.
Also, the waiting table 10 at Canadian surgery centers. I've told that to like 3 or 4 people. I'm like, just tell him and say when you're there, tell the nurse, I'd like to use my coupon code, the waiting table 10, and see what he does.
There you go.
Hey.
Okay.
Oh, he'll know.
We have like 2 questions. Can we do like 2 more rapid fire? Are you okay with that, Kim?
Yeah.
You don't want to drown yet. Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. You already shared your thoughts about low fat, fat free. What about sugar free or low sugar food and drinks? What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts on that is just be careful with sugar-free or low sugar. A lot of those times they do add sugar alcohols. And so those can be problematic, especially for bariatric, but anybody, bloating, cramping. And, honestly, again, what I usually try to look at more of is, looking at the whole food, looking at our meals, and instead of like always trying to pick the lowest sugar item, like, look, if we're going to have something, let's enjoy it. Let's eat it. I find that a lot of the low sugar, sugar-free, again, cause issues for folks. And, a lot of them do use the non-nutritive sweeteners, which are a lot sweeter than table sugar, which kind of gets us going on like, I like that sweeter taste, and then we're craving that. And so honestly, I'd rather you just eat the source, whatever that might be, enjoy it, moving on, and so I'm not against them. I'm not saying that you should never have them, but I would just be careful if that's like all your fluids and things like that, or like the, they use the
Prime energy drinks.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Can I just say something
for
about
the
that?
young people like Shay?
You guys,
I have no clue what that is.
Liar.
I swear. I don't know energy drinks.
Go ahead, Kim.
I love this.
Let it
Okay.
out.
I'm going to let this out. So my kids, I have a 13-year-old, right? No, he knows everything in life. And his buddies, they're all drinking Prime. And so my son, I'd never even heard of this until, last couple months. And so my kid's like, hey, when you come to the game, bring me a Prime. And I'm like, what the hell is that? So I'm like, I'm like dietitian. I'm like, oh, let me look this up. Is it a new, sports drink? What is it? Well, essentially it's really like, it's just a glorified coconut water. And what folks have to really understand is what we are losing in our sweat. So what is a sports drink? It is meant to replenish the electrolytes that we're losing in our sweat, and then also carbohydrates usually. And then they'll throw in like B vitamins for, marketing. But the issue with the Prime is that it is almost all potassium and minimal sodium. And what you're losing in your sweat is way more sodium than you are losing potassium. So you're not replacing what you're actually losing, excuse me.
Yeah.
So it's not the most ideal for an athlete that's, wanting, like if I had an endurance athlete and they're like, I'm drinking Prime out on the course, I'd be like, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm gonna be honest.
Sure.
Unless it's just like, hey, I drink Prime, but I'm getting salt somewhere else. Fair enough. But if that's your Prime thing, There we are. That's why they call it Prime.
See,
If
it's
that's your only
working.
drink, it's working. They're sucking me in. If that's the only drink, I would say you need to make sure you're getting salt elsewhere.
Yeah.
So,
And
sorry.
realistically, kids aren't drinking Prime for that. They're drinking it because
Yeah.
Logan Paul
Yeah.
represent.
It's like all
Maybe
cool.
we can get a hashtag and a coupon code the Prime.
Yeah. Well, after that spiel, they're like, nope.
Yeah, they're like, no, these guys
That
are
was not a
horrible.
good advertisement. I'm not
Murph
saying you
10,
can't drink
Prime
it.
10.
Make sure you have some salt elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
Well, so that's not necessarily an energy drink, right? You said it's more.
Yeah, typically
like-
energy drinks will incorporate some kind of stimulant, usually some kind of caffeine is
Yeah.
usually in there, or other ergogenic, aid that they'll say is like their proprietary blend.
Yeah.
And then you have no idea what that means or what is actually in there. That's usually what's in energy drinks. And I'm not against it. Again, my biggest thing when I educate, clients is, nutrition, food first. If you're relying on caffeine to get through a workout, it's really, that's not the best strategy. The best strategy is to actually provide your muscles with the energy that it's going to use. Caffeine, yes, it's a central nervous system stimulant, and so it can be helpful, but you better have other strategies in place too, because that's not going to sustain you,
Yeah.
So energy drinks typically have caffeine.
Yeah. So the question about the sugar-free, low-sugar food and drink,
Yeah.
I think the context of that was mainly protein shakes and bars.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Murph 10 Built Bars is what she had in mind. So yeah, where do you sort of put some of the like sugar alcohols and the sugar-free things? Like, obviously a lot of these bars are going to have more sugar alcohols to try to keep their overall sugar down, right?
Right.
So I will say Built Bars, in terms of the overall balance of the macronutrients, is actually pretty good. That's actually why I started using
grams
Built
of
Bars.
sugar?
Yeah, I started using Built Bars prior to Murph.
Mhm.
Representing.
I just find honestly that a lot of the sugar-free or whatever, because you're not getting that carbohydrate, and again they'll have other macros in there, but it may not satiate you as well. It may not be as good balance. So, but yeah, protein shakes, Built Bars are what I had in mind. Yeah, I would say yes. Certainly as a bariatric patient, we do have to be careful with the overall amount of carbohydrates that we're taking in. So certainly it's not a bad idea. I would just say go off of your total intake in a day. Are you eating a more well-balanced diet and you're putting those in as some good snacks? Fine. That's totally fine to do. I would just see how you tolerate it.
And I know for me, I've talked about this before for myself, but like my body tends to crave and respond better to like lower processed foods. So like I would consider like protein shakes and bars and things like that more highly processed, whereas like lower processed would be things like bone broth, chicken, like more of a whole foods. And so that's something too to maybe think about and consider, like where I have seen this kind of in the community where people are only eating, or what it appears to be only eating, like highly processed foods. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always going to, whole foods, certainly are going to give us more of the nutrients because they haven't been stripped away through processing and things like that. So I'm always a bigger fan of trying to get it closest to its natural form as you can. But I think there's a time and a place, because I'll give you an example. If you have someone that does have much higher protein goals, for someone that's trying to gain muscle, there can be a time and a place where shakes and bars can be helpful, because eating 8 to 10 ounces of chicken at a meal is not conducive for most bariatric patients to do. And in order to meet 200 grams, you got to fit it in some way. So I think there's a time and a place. I would just say making sure that your overall intake has more, if you can, less processed should be, this main part of your diet. And then these products definitely have a place as well.
Right. No, I think that's great. Murph just went to the bathroom. This is his customary. He turned 40 last year, and so the prostate, and this is his pee time.
Yeah,
It happens.
okay.
I'm waiting for it
40.
to start kicking in for me. Like I'm waiting for it.
That's how
to
we'll
be like,
know.
okay, it's time.
That's the funniest part is he can still hear us while we're talking.
Yeah, and we
just
talk
found
like
that
he
out. We found that out last week.
He's like,
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm 43. I'm going to be 44 soon. And I'm like, man, after 40, things changed a little bit.
Dang,
So,
you look good, Kim. I would not
Oh.
have guessed that. Not saying that that's old, but like you look really good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm telling you. But after that, it got a lot harder. I don't recover as well from things, let's just say, from,
yeah.
fun nights. Things have changed. So-
Rob knows nothing about recovering from fun nights
What?
at all.
No, I just keep the fun going, so there's no recovery, right? You
There
don't
you
have to
go.
recover if
That's
it's
the
always
secret
fun.
after 40. You
Yeah,
just keep
well-
the
Just
fun
keep going.
rolling.
You just keep going.
But after
right?
40, you can't keep going. That's the real secret.
It definitely is harder, I will say. So I turned 40 a couple of months ago, and yeah, and it's not like, I had someone asking, like, oh, is it a big difference? I'm like, no, at 39, we're still struggling to recover from hard nights, right? So it's like that plus a couple months.
Right.
But yeah, we don't enjoy it, Shay. Enjoy it.
No, honestly, at 28, I'm in bed. But last night, me and Dylan went to bed at like 8:45, and we weren't even. It was his birthday on Monday. We went to a concert over the weekend, and like we didn't do anything too crazy, but we were both tired.
Good night.
So
Yeah. Good night. My house, 9:00. It's like the
Wow.
lights out.
Lights out. I have my 3 kids. I'm like, good night, everyone. Roll it up. We're going to
Yeah,
bed. That's it.
That's why, like,
Yeah.
I'm thankful I'm on Pacific Standard Time. I'm like, I could not be doing this at 9 p.m. like my time. I'd be sleeping.
Same.
Obviously I wish I could get more sleep, but I've learned to be pretty efficient with 3 to 4 hours.
Wow.
Unfortunately. But before every long ride,
Yeah.
I will sleep 3
Sleep
hours.
Yeah.
No, 3 hours before every long ride,
that's
because
it.
I
3.
I run through the whole course, every single turn in my head. And so I'm constantly just thinking before bed, and then I always have to fuel a certain amount of time. Because I try to have 2 meals before our big rides.
Mhm.
And so it's always, it's not very much sleep, unfortunately, but yeah, do what I can.
Don't pass it off like sleep isn't that important. That can't.
Oh, it's super important. No, don't do it regularly, guys.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Hopefully
I need
2
my
nights
8.
before. Yeah, I need my 8.
I need 8 hours.
Yeah,
or
well,
else
same.
I'm
you
up
can get
there.
8.
Yeah, same.
I'll get if I get 6, I'll be all right, but I can't do that too many days in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I slept all day today, and I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight, but
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah, I'll probably sleep tonight.
I do want to give hope. Tatiana just had said that.
Oh, yes.
She said, I'd assume that at some point transitioning from shakes to more real food will happen. I max out at around 2 ounces of meat, and
Yeah.
I can just speak for my experience, but yes, it does happen. And I think for me, it was just not being afraid of it and trying things and not being afraid of like making mistakes. Like
Right.
that's kind of how I would approach it, where, it might not be the right thing for everybody, but it's like, I would try it and see how my body felt. And it's like, good, that felt good, or that didn't feel good, and just kind of adjust from there. But it will get better. 4 months is still pretty freshly
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of changes every month. There'll be something different, and
Mhm.
your body will normalize and get used to things that you had done previously in terms of overall intake. So it'll get better. It'll get better.
Yeah.
You know what we should do? We should all sign up with Kim, and then do a series, monthly check-ins or weekly
love it.
check-ins. We should do it.
I
All
think we
3 of
should.
us.
I would love to, because I'm a lot of these questions were helpful for me, because I'm really trying to get more movement, more intentional movement in. And it's like, we call it the baby giraffe syndrome, where I'm just not used to like moving in these new ways. So
Sure.
I'm down.
We should do it. I think we should totally.
Honestly, I mean, nutrition is your friend. I mean, and using it to your advantage is smart to do, because it's going to help you reach your goals. It's going to help you feel better as you work towards these goals, because the worst thing is I want to go run, running or cycling long distance. I mean, that's hard. And so it's not easy to be like pumped about it, but then also you feel terrible. It's like, well, this, is short-lived because it's hard, So yeah, use nutrition to your advantage. It really, really can change things for you.
Well, where can we find you, Kim, if we want to follow up and see what other cool tips and tricks that you have? Where's the best way to find you?
Well, I'm on social media, so I'm on Instagram. My handle is Active Bariatric. I have a TikTok page. I have a YouTube page, Facebook, and my website is activebariatricnutrition.com. That's where you can learn more about my one-to-one services. And then I do have a podcast as well, the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast, and I typically publish once a week. Sometimes I'll take, a week, a couple of weeks off, just get some, new fresh stuff going. But typically it's up every Monday, the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast. So check that out too.
Yes.
Cool.
Awesome.
Hear
It's an
your
awesome-
buttery voice.
That's what I was gonna say. Not only is it full of great information, you get the smooth, buttery voice.
Ooh, man, thanks you guys. I didn't
Right?
know.
Kim, thank you so much again for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom and experience with all of us. I kept looking at the clock to see how much time we had left, because there's I paid Tatiana to ask those questions because they're all mine. No, I'm just kidding. No, but there's just so much out there. I while we're doing this, I can't wait to post this to my bariatric fitness group that we're part of, because they would learn so much from this. And I just think that it not only is so helpful for the people in the bariatric community, but I feel like it provides us hope, right? Not just in terms of, hey, I can eat more, which is, I think, the first thing that we think of, but hey, I could do more, right? I could be mobile. Like for me, it was just I can't walk down to 3 houses down. I can envision myself doing a lot more, being an athlete like Murph, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's I think this is an awesome episode. I think your services do a ton for our community. So
Thank you.
yeah, check him out, guys. And that is all the time we've got for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us on the Waiting Table Podcast, where we're serving the weight loss community
One pound at a time.
Everybody, have a good time. Before we
Bye, guys.
our little dancing out.
The
Or
music.
I think we should do the chim
music.
chimney out every time now.
That's
That
how
was
we
from
leave,
last week.
apparently.
Yeah.
That's Murph's I need to go to the bathroom
Yeah,
move,
so-
as opposed to just ninjaing out and just sort of sliding down like this.
He's usually pretty fast, but we still call him out on it. Or you call him out on it every single
every
time.
time,
Rob.
every time.
Every time.
Oh shoot! What happened to Murph? Are you all right?
I have a drinking problem. Sorry.
Fluids are good. We learned
Fluids are
that.
good.
Fluids and fiber.
That's right.
There you go.
Fiber, guys, get it. Have a
Yeah.
good one.